Today, we're exploring the social animal, the hidden sources of love, character, and achievement. As its subtitle suggests, this is a story of love, character, and achievement. The book's central thesis is this: the unconscious mind is the key to our motivations and life choices. Understanding its power can help us find a path to success that is truly our own. Everyone wants to succeed. From bestseller shelves in bookstores to popular QA forums online, we are constantly being told how to achieve it. Most of this advice emphasizes that through conscious effort, we can attain conventional success. But the author of this book disagrees. He argues that our conscious control over who we become is actually quite limited. Behind the scenes, a combination of emotions, intuition, biological instincts, cultural norms, moral codes, and even our physical environment is at play. These factors shape our behavior and choices through the unconscious mind. This is the true meaning of being a social animal. Therefore, in our daily actions and even our biggest life decisions, character is often more important than reason, social relationships are more important than individual choices, and emotional intelligence is often more important than IQ. Success is far more than just getting a good degree or a great job. It's a continuous journey of self-discovery and development, of finding a way to live in harmony with the world and forge deep, meaningful connections. Before we dive in, let us get to know the author, David Brooks. He is a prominent columnist for the New York Times and also serves as a political and cultural commentator on television. He has written 4 books, 2 of which, including The Social Animal, have been New York Times bestsellers. To make the topic engaging, Brooks borrows a literary device from the 18th century French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In his book Émile, Rousseau invented a protagonist and his mentor to explore his educational philosophy. The Social Animal does something similar, creating a fictional American couple, Harold and his wife, Erica. By tracing their entire lives from birth and education to love, marriage, work, and retirement, the book shows us how the unconscious mind that shapes our choices is formed. Brooks has long been fascinated by the mechanisms of human thought and behavior. He noticed that while various disciplines study this question, their findings often remain siloed and fail to reach a wider audience. He chose to use storytelling to place life's big questions into realistic contexts, exploring what kind of person, with what kind of experiences and perspectives, would develop certain ideas. In doing so, he weaves together research on the unconscious from different fields to answer the questions. When are you not in control, but being guided by your unconscious mind? And what are the reasons behind it? In the author's view, only by clearly understanding the unconscious factors behind our actions and choices can we better understand ourselves and achieve what he calls true success. Now, let's delve into the book's key ideas. We'll focus on 3 main points. First, the unconscious mind's influence on our choices is far more profound than that of the conscious mind. Second, how the conscious and unconscious minds work together. Third, how we can foster a better collaboration between our conscious and unconscious minds to build a better life. Let us start with the first point. The unconscious mind's influence is more profound than that of the conscious mind. To compare their respective impacts, we first need to define the unconscious. The author describes it as the mental activity that occurs outside of our awareness, which we cannot directly perceive or recognize. For example, when you're on a date, you can often tell within minutes if you have chemistry whether you should keep exploring the connection or call it a night. But if asked for a specific reason why there wasn't a spark, you might just say, "I just wasn't feeling it." It seems like a conclusion reached without any thought. But as the author explains, just because we can't name the reason doesn't mean our brain wasn't thinking. The process simply took place on an unconscious level, hidden from our conscious awareness. The book begins with the love story of Harold's parents, Rob and Julianne, revealing how they were guided by their unconscious minds. Rob met Julianne at a luncheon and was immediately captivated. If you asked him why, he couldn't have explained it. But his judgment was sharp, stemming from an ability honed through evolution. Unlike other female animals, human females don't show obvious physical signs of ovulation. Men therefore evolved to recognize subtle cues like skin smoothness to identify when a woman is in her peak reproductive window. This information is stored in the male unconscious, ready to be deployed, guiding young men like Rob to notice attractive partners. We have a more familiar name for this information: genes. When Julian first met Rob, she smiled but didn't fall for him instantly. From an evolutionary perspective, women face a more complex choice in a partner. They bear the primary responsibility for child rearing but may not have the means to support a family alone. Therefore, women are more inclined to assess a potential partner's survival skills, intelligence, and reliability over time. This wisdom is also engraved in the female unconscious, reminding her not to rush into a commitment. However, things changed when Rob struck up a conversation. They were delighted to find they had much in common, including a shared love for the movie Roman Holiday. Behind their conversation, their unconscious minds were constantly gathering and analyzing data, communicating the results to each other as feelings. For instance, their unconscious minds were gauging each other's vocabulary and expressiveness, concluding that their intellectual levels were a good match. This made their interaction feel increasingly joyful. Now let us turn to our main characters, Harold and Erica, and how they fell in love. They were work partners. Erica was in charge of client negotiations, while Harold translated her ideas and client needs into viable plans. They worked together seamlessly. Harold had an uncanny ability to grasp Erica's vision, which thrilled her, while her endless stream of brilliant ideas captivated him. As they worked toward a common goal, they saw in each other qualities to be treasured and, involuntarily, began to see each other as perfect. Harold felt an irresistible force take over his life, making him feel incomplete and creating an intense desire to share everything with Erica, to feel everything together, to merge into one. If you were to observe Harold's brain at this moment, you would see heightened activity in his caudate nucleus. Neuroscientists believe one of the brain's main functions is to create models of the world. When a model aligns with reality, we feel pleasure. People in love may not be aware of it, but their feelings and actions are guided by this brain activity. When two people fall in love, the caudate nucleus in both their brains fires simultaneously, creating a powerful sense of bliss. Deeply in love, Harold and Erica ate, worked, and relaxed together, achieving a perfect synchrony in almost every aspect of their lives. They experienced the profound truth of love, a deep sense of fusion. In all these feelings and experiences of falling in love, the activity of the unconscious mind clearly played a much larger role than conscious thought. Through these two love stories, we see that the unconscious, the mental activity outside of our awareness, often influences us more profoundly than our conscious mind. Next, our second point: how the conscious and unconscious minds cooperate. If the unconscious is so powerful that it even drives monumental decisions like who we marry, does that mean we should just follow our gut? The author argues that completely ignoring the conscious mind is equally misguided. The two systems have distinct roles and are meant to work together. The author uses a vivid metaphor. The conscious mind is like a general at a command post, while the unconscious is his army of thousands of scouts. The conscious general excels at seeing the big picture, using linear logic and language to analyze problems rationally. Its weakness is a lack of sensitivity to environmental changes. Furthermore, since real-world information is often incomplete, logical analysis has its limits. The unconscious scouts, on the other hand, operate without logic or reason. They are extremely sensitive to their surroundings, rapidly gathering and processing vast amounts of information. Based on their observations, they tag this information with emotions. If they sense danger, they send a signal of anxiety to the general. If the atmosphere feels harmonious, they let the general know it's safe to relax. This helps the conscious general make faster decisions. However, in their pursuit of efficiency, these scouts can sometimes get lazy and provide the general with biased intelligence. For example, a study on happiness found that people's answers were influenced by the weather. On sunny days, they were more likely to report being happy. But if respondents were explicitly told to consider the weather, this effect disappeared. In another study, when told a person was a truck driver, subjects tended to overestimate his weight. When told he was a ballet dancer, they underestimated it. This is where the powerful unconscious can be unreliable, which is why we can't always go with our gut. Furthermore, The general and scouts metaphor illustrates that conscious processes are built on an unconscious foundation. The conscious mind must first receive goals and signals from the unconscious before it can act. And consciousness usually lacks the power to control the unconscious directly. The protagonist, Erica, experienced this lack of control in high school. She loved tennis and, through intense practice, became one of the best players on her school team. Yet, while she was careful and deliberate in her daily life, she had a terrible temper on the court, especially when she lost a point. During one singles match as the second seed, Erica fell apart after a series of bad serves. She was angry and frustrated. Her coach tried to calm her down, advising her to breathe deeply and offering tactical advice, but she couldn't hear a word of it. Trapped in a vicious cycle, she began to give up. After a particularly bad shot, she threw her racket. When the umpire made a bad call, she screamed, "Are you crazy?" and slammed her racket on the ground, causing the umpire and her opponent to back away in fear. In that moment, Erica's conscious mind knew her behavior was completely inappropriate, yet she felt a strange, thrilling urge to punch someone. It wasn't until the next evening that the reality of her actions sank in, and she broke down crying at home, overwhelmed by shame. She was deeply confused. Why couldn't she control herself? It felt like the person on the court wasn't the real Erica. Her parents began to worry that she would be unable to manage her emotions rationally in the future. Beyond Erica's story, there are many similar examples in our own lives. We all know that consumerism doesn't lead to happiness, yet countless people can't curb their spending and willingly drown in credit card debt. We all understand that moderate exercise is beneficial, but after a long day at work, we tell ourselves, "I'm too tired today, I'll do it tomorrow." Whether it's Erica's emotional outbursts or our own repeated failures at self-discipline, the root cause is a failure of cooperation between the conscious and unconscious minds. Our conscious general is unable to command the situation. This brings us to our third point. How can we get our conscious and unconscious minds to work together to achieve a better life? One psychologist famously compared the human psyche to a rider on an elephant. The elephant represents our emotions, intuition, and other unconscious forces, while the rider is our conscious mind. The rider can't command the elephant through brute force. A smart rider knows how to use skill to guide the elephant so they can move in harmony. The author admits that research has yet to provide a definitive answer on how consciousness can cleverly guide the unconscious, but there are many practical methods we can try. First, now that we understand the potential for cognitive bias, we should adopt an attitude of what British Enlightenment thinkers called epistemological humility. A humble person knows that because most mental activity is unobservable, we can never truly know ourselves or others, nor can we fully grasp the essence of a situation. And because we can't grasp the essence, it means there is always more than one way to solve a problem. A humble person's choice is to employ multiple methods at once. Therefore, especially when facing complex situations, we should be patient, perceive our surroundings, and accept uncertainty rather than rushing to judgment. As our unconscious mind gathers more and more information about the environment, it will gradually form a mental cognitive map to help us act appropriately. Besides humility and patience, understanding how the unconscious works can help us consciously train it. The author points out that our cognitions and behaviors are recorded and updated in the brain through neural connections. Repeating an action strengthens its corresponding neural pathway, making it easier to activate in the future. Therefore, we can use external situational cues and conscious, sustained practice to reinforce a behavior's neural connection until it becomes an internalized part of our unconscious. Erica, whom we discussed earlier, eventually solved her emotional control problem through deliberate practice. In later matches, she began to use a method of indirect self-control. When her emotions started to sour, she would initiate a series of small, habitual actions to give herself positive psychological cues. For example, she would always place her racket under her chair and tap her right foot on the ground before every serve. She also made a rule for herself. Once on the court, she would focus only on the game. If she noticed her mind wandering, she would take a step back, bounce the ball a few times, and then continue. Through constant, deliberate practice, Erica gradually developed extraordinary self-control. Years later, After retiring, Erica encountered another method for observing the unconscious during a reunion with her college roommate, mindfulness meditation. Her roommate explained how to start by focusing on the breath, feeling each part of the body, and experiencing the dissolution of the self into the sensations that arise from within. Upon finishing, one can see the world from a completely new perspective. At first, Erica dismissed it as religious nonsense. But in reality, meditation, much like the indirect self-control methods of her youth, is a way of using consciousness to capture and guide the unconscious. Many neuroscientists and psychologists highly endorse meditation. Studies have found that different types of meditation induce different states of brain activity. Although we still don't fully understand how meditation changes the brain, people who are skilled at meditation and prayer can indeed consciously perceive and reshape their unconscious, fostering better collaboration between it and the conscious mind. That brings us to the end of our summary. Let us quickly recap. First, we explored what the unconscious mind is and why its impact is more profound than that of our conscious mind. Through the love stories of two generations, we saw that falling in love is not purely a conscious choice but is heavily influenced by unconscious factors like genetics and social conditioning. Second, we analyzed the partnership between the conscious and unconscious minds. They are like a general and his scouts. The general relies on the scout's emotionally colored intelligence to make decisions. The scouts are sharp and efficient, but can sometimes deliver biased information or even disobey orders. Finally, we discussed how to harness the power of the unconscious to build a better life. The author offers two key insights. First, maintain humility and patience, accept uncertainty, and use diverse methods to solve problems. Second, instead of fighting the powerful unconscious directly, use clever techniques like situational cues, deliberate practice, and mindfulness meditation to guide it. In tracing the lives of its protagonists, this book not only masterfully demonstrates the influence of the unconscious, but also presents a cross-section of contemporary American society, revealing the author's deep concern for social progress. The characters participate in nearly every major facet of American life and endure personal crises like infidelity and bankruptcy. The author doesn't use them to make direct moral judgments. Instead, through his depiction of a real human life, he allows the reader to slowly understand what kind of person, based on what experiences and perspectives, would come to think in a certain way. Understanding this, we can better appreciate the meaning of the title and the author's intent. Humans are social animals who depend on interpersonal connections to survive, develop, and succeed. Likewise, the health of a society depends not on the maximization of individual interests, but on the quality of its social fabric. The Social Animal is an ambitious book. It attempts to synthesize research from psychology, neuroscience, genetics, and sociology into a single volume to explain how the behaviors and choices beyond our conscious control come to be. It is an invaluable tool for self-understanding. Of course, the author is merely opening the door, offering one perspective for consideration. The precise workings of the unconscious mind and its role in each individual's behavior are questions that still await deeper exploration through interdisciplinary collaboration. That's all for today's summary. Congratulations on finishing another book.